is stripped away, and I simply come, wanting just to bring something that's of worth. I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself is not what you have required. You search much deeper within, through the way things appear. You're looking into my heart. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the things I made it, when it's all about you. You, Jesus. King of endless worth, no one could express how much you deserve. Though I'm weak and poor, all I have is yours, every single breath. I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself, it's not what you have required. You search much deeper within, through the way things appear. You're looking into my heart, to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the things I made it, when it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the things I made it, when it's all about you. It's all Jesus. When it's all about you, it's all about you, Jesus. Are you hurting and broken within, overwhelmed by the weight of your sin? Jesus is calling. Have you come to the end? Do you thirst for a drink from the well? Jesus is calling. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Leave behind your regrets and mistakes. Come today, there's no reason to wait. Jesus is calling. Bring your sorrows and trade them for joy. From the ashes a new life is born. Jesus is calling. Oh, come to the altar. The Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Oh, what a Savior! Isn't He wonderful? Sing hallelujah. hallelujah, Christ is risen. Oh, come to the altar, the Father's arms are open wide. Forgiveness was bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. Bear your cross as you wait. Tell the world of the treasure you found. Jesus is calling.
Thank you. You may be seated. Jesus is indeed calling us today, and as we listen to that voice and as we hear that voice, then we can follow the call that he has in our lives. Again, thank you all for helping us to move to a little different flow here in our worship service today. And it always takes a little bit to get used to a different method, different format, different flow of things to go. But I think in the future that it will prove to be even a little more worshipful. Our text today for the sermon is Acts chapter 17. Verse 28, 4 to 28. Acts 17, 24 to 28. It's Paul speaking. Paul says, reference to God, he said, he is the God who made the world and everything in it. Since he is Lord of heaven and earth, he doesn't live in man-made temples. Human hands can't serve his needs, for he has no needs. He himself gives life and breath to everything, and he satisfies every need. From one man he created all the nations throughout the whole earth. He decided beforehand that when they should rise and fall, and he determined their boundaries. His purpose was for the nations to seek after God and perhaps feel their way toward him. He is not far from any one of us. For in him we live and move and exist. As some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. Question for you, what is the hardest small talk question to answer? The hardest small talk question to answer. For example, you run into somebody in the busy aisles of Market Basket. You know those busy, tight aisles, and there's always too many people, and there's always traffic jams and log jams of people trying to look and see things on the shelf. It's like you can't look on the shelf of Market Basket, stop and pause. You have to know what you want. Grab it in the way by, or otherwise you can, people go, oh. Anyway, so you get crazy one day, you see someone you know in Market Basket, and you decide to have a conversation with that person, thereby causing a logjam. The disgruntled people that are trying to get around you, they're making you uncomfortable, but you don't want to be rude and quickly say, oh, I gotta go, goodbye, I'm getting shoved by the person behind me. So you stay for a few moments and talk, and you get to that point, you haven't seen that person in a little bit, and then the person asks you the question, that question that I'm talking about, that small talk question, the one that we all dread. What is it? The question is this, they say this, they ask, so what's new? So what's new? You know that question, probably been asked it 1,000 times, maybe you've asked people that 1,000 times, and you think to yourself for a and you hear thinking to yourself, all in this split second, what's new? I don't know what's new. What should I say? I could talk about the dog getting sick all over the rug, but that seems so strange to bring up right now. And then your answer just comes out, and it is, what's your answer? Nothing, right? Nothing's new. Not much, not much. Which then, like I said, in the split second of time, because you get people behind you, in that split second of time, this depressing realization comes over you. Boy, my life is boring. Someone asks me what's new, and all I ever say is nothing. When people realize this, they have nothing, they take either one of two directions from that point on, right? There's one or two ways that you can go. Either at that point in time, after you've answered nothing, you can either cut the conversation short and say like, oh, look at the time, gotta go, someone's behind me pushing me here. Or it causes other people at that point in time to talk about things just to fill up dead airspace, you know, those kinds of people. And people are behind you and they're trying to get around you and you know, they're talking and talking and talking about this and that and the other thing after they've been asked the question of what's new because they don't know what else to say. And then it it makes the asker of the question, what's new, kind of regret asking it in the first place. So which one are you? Are you the, oh, look at the, I have nothing to say, or are you the kind of person that just likes to go on and on and on to fill up that air space? Because you talk about things that you think may be interesting, however, to the rest of the world, it might not be that interesting. Oh, hey, here's a list, right? 5 things that no one wants to listen to. Are you ready for this? 5 things that no one wants to listen to. Number 1, your opinion about politics, okay? No one wants to listen to it. Just understand right now. No one wants to hear about it. Number 4, your Caribbean cruise vacation that you went on 5 years ago, okay? No one wants to hear about it, see pictures of it, understand what you did, like, you know, in the Mumba section of the dance floor. Things people don't want to hear about. Your description of the dream that you had last night, okay? Save that for people closest to you. No one wants to hear about your dream. We all had dreams last night, whether we remember them or not. Number 2 of things that people don't want to hear, what you had for dinner, okay? Just don't even say it, okay? And number 1, the thing that no one wants to hear about is that movie or that Netflix series that you are watching. No one wants to hear about it, okay? No one wants to hear all the details of what's going on in the movie or the next Netflix series. You know, to most everyone, these might be very important things to you, but to everyone else, they're kind of mundane. So where am I going with all this, okay? I guess my point is the person you are when you're asked the question, what's new, whether you're the, oh, look at the time, let me get out of here person, or the master of the mundane chatter, filling dead air with talk about nothingness. Either way, why is there nothing new in our lives? That's my question. Why is there nothing new in our lives? And by something new, I don't mean that Uncle Ned has COVID, okay? Or that the lightning spread of the Omicron variant. We're all going through that, okay? That's everyone's experience. That's not what I mean. I mean something new that you're doing in your life. Something new that we're doing in our lives. Like the next time someone asks the question, what's new, wouldn't it be great to actually have an answer? Right? To actually be able to say something that's new in your life. But in order to have an answer, well, at least a good one, we actually need to have new things happening in our lives. And we should have new things happening in our lives all the time. All the time. You know, life is a gift. Life is a gift, and if we're breathing right now, then we are blessed. We truly are. God has given us this gift of life. How are we using it? How are we living out this gift? Or to ask it very differently, in a very different way, my question then becomes, have flow. Flow. I don't mean Flo, the Progressive Insurance lady. No, that's not what I mean. I mean flow, F-L-O-W, because flow is very important to living an invigorating and fulfilling life. It's very important in living a life that is full of new experiences and forward motion. As most of you know, and as I've spoken of before, even from the pulpit, I am a passionate mountain biker. That's what I do. One of the things I do. And to me, there's something about rolling along quickly through tight trails under your own power, navigating obstacles and trying for perseverance. When I'm doing it, it's all about flow. Flow is something that mountain bikers live for. And you ask, what is flow? Well, flow can apply to so many different things, but in terms of what I do, in terms of mountain biking, it's the combination of smooth rideability and technical difficulty. It's a combination of both of those. It's a balance between the two. If a trail that I'm riding has good flow, it means that it's technically challenging to me, and it pushes me, and it's demanding, but it also allows me to rise to the next level. If I focus and I push my limits and advance my skills, I can quickly and successfully and smoothly navigate terrain. That is flow. And there's a feel when this happens. There's this kind of feel that you have. It's a feeling of accomplishment and joy. It's like you're in the zone. You're in the zone. You know that zone that I'm talking about? You're in the zone, and just things make sense and things work. That's what flow is. The Apostle Paul, in today's text, he was in that zone. He had flow going on real nicely in this text. Now, he wasn't biking, of course. There were no bikes back then, but flow certainly just is not about biking at all. Flow can be in everything that we do, including worship services. We try to achieve flow in our services, that zone, that being challenged in worship, but we're also being soothed and comforted at the same time. Well, Paul, the Apostle Paul, he was a missionary. That's what he did. He brought the good news about Jesus Christ to people who have never heard it before. And he brought it in convincing ways with words and actions that made converts, that brought people to faith. This is what Paul did. And if someone asked Paul the question, that question, hey, Paul, what's new? He'd have a lot to say. He would have a lot to say about what is genuinely new in his life, because Paul's ministry had flow. He overcame obstacles in his ministry. Read about it in the book of Acts. He overcame obstacles and has successfully spread the gospel, starting many new churches. And he never, ever stopped doing something new. He never stopped challenging himself. He never stopped working to better himself in what he did. Well, Paul never backed off. During Paul's time, the center of thinking of the universe, well, the earth at least, the center of thinking in the earth was Athens, Greece. It was the home of great philosophers like Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, so many others. Paul, in his ministry, he could have shied away from Athens. He could have been like, no one is going to believe me in Athens. They're so high on their horse with all their big talk and thinking that no one's even going to listen to me. I'm not going to waste my time or my energy and go to Athens to try to talk to the people of Athens. I'll just stick to the places that I'm used to and the towns and the cities that I've been able to minister in before. And if I just keep doing that, things will go pretty well for me. Well, Paul could have done what was predictable and safe and easy, but he didn't, because that's not Paul. Paul was the kind of guy that if someone asked him what's new, he wanted to always have a solid answer. Answer the question, what's new, by describing his supper that he had last night. He may have thoroughly enjoyed his supper that last night. I don't know what it was. Lamb, I don't know. But he may have, but it wasn't what was new to Paul. Paul wanted his life and his gift to keep on living and giving always. That's flow for Paul. So Paul decides to go to Athens. To go to this place, this bed of thinking in Athens. And he went right to this place called the Areopagus. Now, the Areopagus was northwest of the city of Athens, and it was a small hill covered in stone seats. And this area was used as a forum for the rulers of Athens to hold trials, to have debates, and to all of the great thinking and discussions and debates and arguments happened at this place called the Areopagus. It's where the thinking happened, in the place on earth where thinking happened the most. And in verse 24, Paul is in the middle of talking to these people, to these philosophers and these thinkers and these rulers in Athens, and he's talking to them about what he believes is something new for them to hear. He said, here's some new thoughts for you. Here's something new. If you're going to ask me what's new in the world, I'm going to tell you. And he said it in verse 24. He's talking about God. And he said, God is the God who made the world and everything in it. And since he is Lord of heaven and earth, he doesn't live in man-made. Human hands can't serve his needs, for he has no needs. He himself gives life and breath to everything, and he satisfies every need. Interesting what Paul is saying here. I mean, Athens was full of temples and full of gods and many different kinds of worship of those gods. And Paul here comes into this place which no doubt was very intimidating to him. He's human. He comes into Athens full of religion and full of philosophical thought, and he had flow. He was firing on all cylinders at this point in time. And he says in verse 24, since he's the Lord of heaven, he doesn't live in temples. All these where this God lives. In verse 25, human hands can't serve his needs. He has no needs. He himself, he alone, not all these other gods, give life and breath to everything, and he satisfies every need. Paul went right to the heart of the religious and philosophical world and confidently brought his message to these people. Verse 26, he went on, from one man he created all the nations throughout the whole earth. He decided beforehand when they should rise and fall, determined their boundaries. Verse 27, his purpose was for the nations to seek after God. And perhaps, I love this, I love how Paul puts this. Perhaps and find him, though he is not far from any one of us. Paul is adapting his message to the ears of those who's listening to him. Because this was not a message that would normally resonate at all with the Greek thinkers. Their thinking was on a much different plane than Paul's. But some of them, because of how Paul put it, and because that he was right on task and he was in flow, some of them were at least interested and wanted to hear more about what Paul had to say. Paul was good, and he had a lot of flow. He researched their faith before he even said this. He didn't just go winging it. They believed, and he showed where his faith and their faith could possibly intersect. Verse 28, for in him we live and move and exist, and as some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. Pulling their own poetry into his description about the God that he served. I think it's amazing. It's amazing stuff if you really think about it, what Paul did in Athens. He didn't rant and rave like a religious lunatic, or tell them how wrong they all are. What he did, though, is he reasoned with them and in and through their own thinking and beliefs. And like I said, I'm sure this was not easy for Paul at all. As a matter of fact, I would guess that this is probably his presenting the gospel message, was this moment described right here. I bet he was shaking in his sandals to go and do this. But he rose to the challenge, and he did it better than he had ever done it in the past. And you can read more about Paul's stories. Read the book of Acts. You can read more about this story and how it all turned out. It's right there all around the text that I gave you today. Verse 28 again. For in him we live and move and exist. I can't think of a better description of Christian flow. It might as well read, in my mind, for in him we flow. And that's in the Spirit. That's living in God's will. In him we flow. Are you living in him? Are you living your gift of life? Are you living this gift? Are you moving forward and progressing in your life? Does your existence have flow? To have flow, you need to be engaged in things that are challenging you. To have flow, you need to be engaged in things that do challenge you specifically, but also things that your skills can rise up to and achieve. I don't like to bike on easy trails because it's too easy. It's not exciting. You have to be doing things that are going to invigorate you and challenge you, but things you could also rise up to that challenge and overcome. You know, trails that are too hard for me riding my bike, well, they're just too hard, and then I fall and break my ribs like I did at Highland a few years back. Good flow is a balance between being challenged and the ability to do it. It pushes us beyond our limits, but it also allows us to achieve the advancement that we're looking for. Paul had flow. Paul had very good flow, but not many of us do what Paul did. But you don't have to be like Paul to have flow. Occurs when any task's challenge is balanced with your skills. In fact, both the task challenge and the skill level have to be high. For example, here's an example. You're not going to feel flow when you're doing the dishes, okay? It's just not going to happen. Why is that? Because most people are highly skilled dishwashers, right? Who here is not a highly skilled dishwasher? Don't say it. You're highly skilled, you just don't want to do it. That's the issue right there. Because how do you have flow washing dishes? You know, washing dishes is not a challenging task. But you can feel flow in so many other things. Swimmers specifically, musicians, chess players. Really in the zone. Dancers, mountain climbers, all can have flow. Anyone can find flow in everyday experiences. Some people find flow in just being in nature. Are you one of those people that just likes to be immersed? And you know when you're in that zone. You know when you're there, and you love to be there, and you need to be there in more and more ways because you feel that connection, that flow. Some feel it by practicing yoga. Some feel it by cooking something special or new. You get in that zone of cooking, or you're making something that you just love and you want to do it to the best of your ability. You're in that zone. Many people find that flow when they're reading. And they're reading beyond what they've always done in the past. They're in that zone and reading, and they're just so focused on what you're doing. You know, so long as the task's challenge is high and so are your skills, you should be able to achieve that flow. You can feel flow by doing a puzzle. I've been watching Cynthia Wallstrom on her Facebook doing all of her puzzles. Did you ever see Cynthia? All these puzzles, and I'm like, whoa, those are amazing puzzles that I'm sure are challenging. I remember doing puzzles as a kid, and you know, getting into that place, and you know when you're there doing a puzzle, if it's puzzle's challenging enough, you get into that zone, that flow, and you're seeing things, and you don't know where it goes. It's like you're connected. That's what we need. That's the kind of living that we want to live. It's flow. It's being engaged in life. It's being alive. It's being so alive. It's bettering yourself and thereby growing closer to God. It's living in Him and moving with Him and existing as God created us to be. That's right where you need to be. God didn't... Look, I know it's January, February, it's freezing cold out, but you know, God did not create us to watch endless TV or spend countless hours on social media. God did not create us to do this. I mean, we watch TV, we on social media, it's fine. What God created us to do. God didn't create us also to do the same things we've always done over and over again. Over and over. God created us to strive forward. As our opening scripture today, opening from scripture from Ephesians chapter 4, verse 1, Paul said this: lead a life worthy of your calling. Lead a life worthy of your calling, for you have been called by God. Do you know that? You know you've been called by God. Well, what have I been called to do? Go to Athens and preach to them about the gospel? No, you've been called by God to be you. Created by God to be you. Be the best you can be. Well, why? Why be that way? Why live in flow? Some people call flow the secret to happiness. Because when you feel it, you're in this state of intense concentration, your thoughts are focused, and you're experiencing life rather than focusing on yourself. You're engaged in what you're doing rather than focusing on yourself. You lose a sense of time, and you feel as if there's this merging of actions in your awareness, and you have control of the situation that you're in. The experience is not overly physically or mentally taxing, but it's completely invigorating. And more importantly, and this is why I really want to talk about this, because of the times we're living in. Flow, a recent study actually shows that flow, the concept of flow, helps people refocus thoughts away from something stressful. It's what we need to get our minds off of things that are stressful, and we focus on what yet is enjoyable. In fact, studies have shown that experiencing flow can help guard against depression and burnout. Remember, you're a good apple from last week. And flow keeps your apple from getting rotten. It does. And we need to constantly keep it from getting rotten. Experience stronger feelings of flow, have done better during our COVID-19 quarantine times. Because rather than sitting around and with the weight of the world, we're focused. We're flowing on something. We're no matter what's going on in life or where we have to be, we're flowing on something. We're flowing in something. And those that have done that have done much better during COVID-19 compared to people who have had not so great experiences. Probably because feeling flow helped distract them from worrying. That's just how we work. When we find that flow zone in life, and instead of feeling grumpy or irritable or depressed or blah, what do we feel? We feel like what our opening scripture said again in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 2. We can be humble. We feel that we can be gentle. We feel that we can be patient with each other, making allowances for each other's faults because of your love. Verse 3, make every effort to keep yourselves united in the Spirit, binding yourselves together with peace. That comes from someone who has flow in their lives. That comes from someone who is in that zone. Find that zone. Find that flow. Find that calling of who God's called you to be and what God's called you to do. And the next time you're out and about, bump into someone that you know and they ask you the question, what's new? You can say something like this. You can say, hey, what's new? I tried this new recipe last night. It was delicious. And then you say, wait a minute, PC, I thought we couldn't talk about... Here's the twist that makes it okay. Okay? Rather than just talk about the supper you had last night and the recipe that you tried, why don't you say to your friend, hey, why don't you come over and I'll cook for you? Or maybe I'll make it and bring it to your house. Would that be okay? And you might say, well, I don't do that. I couldn't say that. I couldn't ask that question. And I say, find the flow and do it. Well, it's not what I normally do. I feel uncomfortable doing that. Exactly. Exactly. But if we never do those kinds of things, then we always just stay right where we are. Find and do in that flow. Because that is where real life happens. And as it says in our text today, verse 28, as it says, for in him we live and move and exist. For in him we have flow. Could you prepare to receive communion today? And those at home,